Today we're going to make our own scratch art paper. So I want you to use a quarter sheet of cardstock. So I've shown how large a full piece is, and then I'm going to be using 1/4 of the sheet. The half sheet that I have, I'm going to set aside because I will be using that for the final project. And if I just have one extra, I can set that to the side. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to lay out, should show you some samples. We're going to lay out some colors that are going to be our background. So this is one that I created earlier. Here's another one, and I just worked with the watercolors in creating a base color. And I really just did something very abstract and just kind of some blobs. I played around with blending some colors together in some areas where I had hard edges. Remember, anytime you want to blend the colors, you need to have wet into wet. Both colors need to be wet to get them to blend. If you have an area that you want to go around and you don't want those two colors to touch, one needs to be dry while the other one is painted. So since I just worked with some abstraction here and just some blobs, I thought maybe the next one I do, I can do something more like stripes or polka dots. We're going to be using the materials in your kit, so go ahead and set down your placemat that you have, the 2 pieces of construction paper, fold them out so they're open and big. Get your quarter sheet of paper, get a paper towel, get your watercolors, bucket of water, some brushes, and oil pastels. We won't need the oil pastels till a little bit later. Part 1 is to do the painting. This should be super easy. So I'm going to use my larger brush because I want to cover more area. Thought maybe since I did the last one, it's just kind of more abstraction, right? I just sort of did these blobby type designs that maybe I'll be a little bit more intentional of my designs today. Remember, the more water you use, the lighter the paint is going to be. And see how my paint is actually just changed. And I went from really dark, I got a nice crisp edge because I'm working with blue wet paint onto dry paper. While this drying, and since I kind of want to keep that area crisp, unlike here, I didn't want crisp areas, I wanted everything blending with each other. Wet into wet is what makes them blend. All right, so I'm gonna just leave that section and I'm gonna go to another area, pick a new color. Always add a little bit of water to your paint to kind of activate it, sort of creates a little pool on top. You can start to see when the paint is not just water sitting on top, but the water and the paint actually start mixing together. Okay, I think I'm gonna do some shapes. All right, so I'm gonna let that dry. I'm gonna kind of work my way around. The paint should dry pretty quickly. I'm gonna work into some little section here in the center. You can use any color you want. You can use every single color you have on the palette, or you can keep it a little bit more minimal. Now I'm creating some organic shapes. Maybe you want to do polka dots for the whole thing, maybe stripes for the whole thing. I'm really just kind of giving you options. Okay, so I still have a lot of white. I'm going to be really careful. So I could wait for this to dry and then paint around those edges. Or I can just be really careful. And since I'm working quickly during the demo, I'm just going to be kind of careful. So I'm going to grab some orange. Now I'm going to put orange next to blue. What happens when you mix orange and blue? You get brown. So I want to be careful about allowing these to mix with each other, because I don't want a brown. You might want to switch your brush, right? So this is a small area. Maybe too much water. Whoops, look at that. Too much water. See how the paint stays where you want it to stay when you don't have a lot of water. Okay, and then it's kind of blotchy. So I can just go over it a little bit and kind of blend that together. All right, I'm gonna keep going with the orange just for some consistency. Okay, I'm done with that. I'm gonna allow it to dry, and then I'll be moving into the next step. Okay, we're moving on to part 2 of making your own scratchboard. So you're gonna need your painting that you did on the cardstock, a quarter sheet, and then you're gonna need your oil pastels, and grab your black. So we're actually gonna be covering the entire painting that you did with black oil pastel. And you might find that the paper comes all the way to the end and you need more exposed. So you can either use a fingernail or like some kind of a little tool to get underneath that paper. I'm just using a pen, and then peel some of that paper off. I don't like to take the whole thing off because I kind of like to keep my hands a little bit cleaner by holding onto that paper. So now I've exposed much more of it. Okay, so we're just going to be coloring this whole thing. Not hard at all, but I'm going to show you what to do and what not to do. So notice how one side is totally dark, right? This is like pretty solid. And notice that this has sort of like a crayon look, and it's really grainy. Okay, this is what we don't want. Okay, so you want to feel it completely solid, and you're going to go all the way up to those edges. You don't want to have any of that paper showing through. So after you do a bit, you might decide to go the other direction, and that could be helpful. So once you get to the end, if you want, I'm just taking a piece of paper towel, bunch it up, and kind of just use it to smooth out any of the little goober gobbers that got left behind, and fill in any little missing spots. Okay. All right, that was part 2. Moving on to part 3. All right, we're moving on to some skill builders. You have made your own scratch board. You have watercolor underneath, kind of looked like that. I did oil pastels on top, just the black oil pastel. And you're gonna need to get some kind of a sharp tool. I actually have a scratch tool from school. I'm gonna use this because it's easy for you to see what I'm doing. You could get like a pen cap. I can take this off my pen. I can use that. I can use a paper clip. You can use a shish kebab stick from your kitchen. Any sharp little tool. You could probably use scissors, but the problem with scissors, right, is a little bit like harder to use, but that would work. So preferably wooden items, preferably metal would work. But if not, you can try a wooden stick. So look around your house, look for a paper clip, look for some little thing that you could use to scratch, okay? So once you get your tool, we're going to be creating different kinds of lines, patterns, textures in your paper here, in your DIY scratchboard. So I want you to make between 6 and 8, right? So if this is the shape of my paper, a couple options of how you decide to set it up, right? So if I divide it in half, divide that in half, divide that in half, and down there, now I have 8 sections. If that seems like too much and you want larger areas, let's say that's your paper, I could divide 1, 2, and 3, kind of just guess about where those are to make 3 sections, and then divide that down the middle, and you have 6. And one more option would be to not even worry about the grid idea, because maybe you want to be just kind of organic and just sort of make puzzle pieces. So I've just made 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then obviously if I wanted to keep going, that'd be 7, and that would be 8. So I can make some weird kind of organic design. So it's up to you. This would be 8, this is 6, and this could be 6 or 8, okay? So you need between 6 to 8 different sections, okay? All right, so I'm gonna go for kind of a more simplified version, and I'm just gonna use my scratch tool, and I'm gonna divide it down the middle. And then I'm gonna do 8, so I'm gonna do half. And some people don't like this noise. I'm sorry. Each tool or the way you hold it is going to make a different sound. I do have some paper towel with me. If this is annoying and get rid of little goober gobbers, I can get rid of that over here. Okay, so next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look at this sheet. I do not need to use this, but this is a great resource, and it's in your sketchbook right here. It's right here in front of you. So you have all of these different designs. So this sheet is mostly about lines. I see some things like this. This is not a line, this is a shape because it's an enclosed space. This is definitely lines. And what makes this interesting is the different line variations. So you have skinny and thick and skinny and thick and so on. Then you have something over here where you have blank space and then two lines, blank space, two lines. And where I'm talking about two lines is this side and this side, right? And then they fill that in with different designs, okay? So what we're trying to create is different textures, different line thicknesses. So I'm gonna go with something that I see on this sheet. I see some zigzags, you know, and I can make that exactly the same way if I would like, but you know, it's always good as an artist to challenge myself and do something different. So I'm gonna do sort of like a heartbeat, right? It's like the pulse of a heart. Okay, that could be fine and totally thin line all the way across. I could go in and repeat something, kind of follow what I've already done. And you can see what's happening is in between my lines, you can see the colors change, right? So you can see the blue and the orange and the green, and that is from the paint that I used underneath. So you're scratching off that top layer to expose the paint. All right, let's try another one. How about starting from the corner and doing round lines? And I could just keep going with that. Maybe in between them, I add some lines there. Or what about if this line needs to be a little bit thicker? Because I said I do want you to use different line thicknesses. So not every line can be skinny. Okay, and then I could do that on this side. So this is your practice. This is you experimenting with what colors look good underneath. I really love the way the blue shows up. Which patterns look good. And so now I'm going to repeat this. Okay, and I definitely think that I should repeat this kind of laddery shape. So let's see, I had 1, 2, thick, thick. 1, 2, this one should be my thick one. Which means I have my lines here. Okay. 2 down, 6 to go. Okay, I have completed all my 8 sections, and I'm going to look at, do I have variations in line thickness? So this one I kept them all skinny. This is all skinny. Here I added shapes. Here I have skinny and thick with a design in between. Here's kind of a medium of, let's call that medium and thin. This one I started thin, but then I fattened the lines up as they went out. These are kind of all fatter. So lots of variation in straight lines, thin lines, thickness, thinness, shapes, a whole variety. I want you trying out different things.